Network Next Gen, is that you? Come on in. Welcome to my magic kingdom. I've been waiting for you. I'm Aimee Wertepny. I'm the main tribe mama behind Project Interiors. Welcome to my house, my loft. I just wanted to create a really zen, like neutral palette and background. I nicknamed it the Magic Kingdom, just because there's so many like tribal moments and animals. My goal with this space is to host people and to have this be a place of community. So I have to say a few of my favorite things in this space. Well, first of all is this fireplace was a client reject, ironically. I know, I can't believe it ended up in my house after storing it for 5 years. One of the things that I knew I wanted was a light fixture that would unify both spaces. So I have a 22-foot long gas pipe element with 50-foot of LED lighting from this really cool designer. His name's Luke. I met him in New York at ICFF. And I love from the outside at night, it actually almost looks like a neon light. This is my entry. It's like the heart of the home for me. It's filled with things that I love that are personal touchstones, but 3 I'll just mention. I bought this peace bell as a housewarming gift to myself, and artist Elliot Bergman, he made it. It's from melted bullet caps, so it's really special. Also, I have a letter that about 10 years ago I wrote that went to a monastery in Nepal and was blessed and sent back to me. So in there are all my wishes that I've been seeing unfold over the years. It's just a nice reminder. So here we are in the kitchen, my little black box. A, I wanted it to look really chic, and B, I wanted to hide everything as best as I could behind cabinetry and panels. The backsplash, ironically, is nothing fancy. It's painted Homasote. It's black oak, and it's from a Armazem. Believe it or not, oven, microwave, behind a door, convenient. And my favorite thing about this is my coffee bar. There are my collection of coffee mugs and small pieces of pottery that I've collected from all over the world. Hi. Welcome to the monkey bar. This literally was a closet. I opened up the wall here, added some salvaged wood from Great Lakes Yard. So I made a bar here. This is Cuckoo. He is our resident monkey. Cuckoo means chicken in Swahili, so that's kind of a fun throwback to Tanzania, where I do a lot of volunteer work. I collect bitters, I collect booze. There's all sorts of cool vintage barware tucked behind on either side of this portal. And I knew I wanted to entertain, and this has become another heart of the home. So this is the guest bathroom, another little black box moment. And my inspiration in here was honestly just to display a bunch of the cool things that I've hunted and gathered. One of my favorite things that came with me from my studio apartment, they used to be pendant lights over my island, are these pendants from artist Stephen Hollenbeek, and they're really cool. They're made out of masking tape. Because it's not only my guest bathroom, it's a powder room also, I wanted an intimate vibe, so I added this linen drape that sort of sections off the wet portion of the bathroom. The toilet and the shower is back there. and just gives you a kind of nice intimate feel. Come on, follow me to Camp Mimi. This mezzanine turned out to be a really cool space. I call it Camp Mimi. My nieces call me Mimi. So this is like the ultimate guest bedroom oasis. And we built a school in Nicaragua, the tribe and I, about 5 years ago. And one of the things that I loved about the way that they lived was everyone had a hammock in their home. So I actually got this hammock from Nicaragua, and that's been a really fun memory. Speaking of memories, I framed a bunch of letters from children in Tanzania that I've worked with over the years. Also Malik, a boy that I've mentored locally here in Chicago. I can say I think this stairway to my new heaven actually has become a storybook of my life in a way. And I love how this became like a really creative take on a collage wall. This was not part of the plan, it just was part of the solution. This space for me has turned out to be a bit more of like a meditative zone. I love plants. I love this. It's like a very serene sanctuary. And one of my favorite things is this mobile. Maasai women beaded this, and I got this from Tanzania. My solution to having a bedroom with no walls or doors, it's a tent. I tented off my entire bedroom area. I wanted to create a sense of intimacy and coziness. I definitely get a good night's sleep in here, and I love waking up in this space. It gets flooded with light in the morning. I have an east view, and it's really, really, really chic. This is the bathroom. I feel like I did the most design hustling here. This cabinet was actually like a credenza that got converted into a sink base, so that's pretty cool. With the can converters, I added these pulley pendants from CB2. These are literally one of my favorite light fixtures that you can buy locally, like from retail. There's also this macrame wall hanging that I used as a divider from this area to where the toilet and the shower is. And that's just literally suspended by a piece of gas pipe from my favorite place, Lowe's. You guys, thank you for letting me show you around the Magic Kingdom. This is truly a labor of love for me. It was the biggest design hustle of my entire career. I love that it was for me finally, and enjoy the rest of your day. So, see ya.
Hello, I'm Helene Oberman, Managing Director of Interior Design Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to Product Tour. Today, we're focusing on a design-driven material solution company which offers breakthrough, sustainable products that help bring your projects to life. Their approach, it promotes craftsmanship, community, sustainability, and a respect for the environments in which we live and work. This company is 3Form, and they have an extensive product portfolio, which ranges from the most innovative materials to the more sophisticated turnkey solutions. With me today to discuss the brand and their latest product innovation, which embraces their technical yet softer side, is Christian Darby, Vice President of Design. Welcome, Christian.
Oh, thank you, Helene.
So, well, of course, when I say softer side, this is in reference to the new technical fabric, which you designed for the Horizon collection, which one can find in your Varia products. So can you give us just a little insight into the new Horizon collection?
Yeah, sure. We started thinking about this one a couple years ago. So it has taken a bit of time to develop. And I think when you see it, you'll kind of understand why. But I started thinking about this idea of translucency. And for 3form, that's like one of our core languages. We believe that translucency and the way you control it can be very, very important in a space, because it allows you to maintain connectedness while still preserving more or less privacy, depending on how you want to shape it. And then, of course, we love light, and as human beings, we love light. So to allow the light to come through and control some of the visuals, translucency is really important. So I started thinking, okay, how can we control translucency and then introduce color in an interesting, kind of thoughtful way? And then with my background, I spent almost 30 years as an apparel designer. And so I have a pretty extensive background in textiles and understanding what we could do with those. And so I thought, well, when we capture textiles in our Varia platform, the richness and the texture that we get from those is really quite stunning. And could we use a textile with a gradient in color, but also a gradient in translucency? And we knew we could.
And I think some of the magic of this collection is like, I think we're also caught up in like the idea of like perfection, and everything needs to be like perfect and ordered and neat, that we capture in digital technology, especially. But I think for this one, like it's about embracing a little bit of the imperfection and the nuances and the subtlety that can only come from this sort of crafted textile, correct?
Yeah, it's true. We can weave and we can knit perfect textiles, but one of the beauties of the Horizon collection is that we introduced various gauges of yarn and slubbiness in the yarn and irregularity in that yarn. And when you look at the way that transition is happening, it just adds kind of that warmth and wonderful kind of welcomeness into the material.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, this is obviously, so Horizon's not your first venture into incorporating textiles into your Varia product, correct?
Right. In fact, we've done a lot of textiles over the years. Even just this year, we launched a collection that we're calling our new classics. We started with one veil. It's a linen looking textile. And then we just felt like we needed a little more chunkiness, a little more irregularity to go alongside veil. So we launched 3 new ones that go alongside veil to kind of complete that look. So we're very good and very comfortable with textiles. And we also believe that textiles resonate well in space.
Well, it's amazing because like I think a very tactile nature. So even if like it's in sort of embedded into the Varia, it still creates that sort of tactileness that I think a lot of people are craving. But Christian, you touched on it. So you do have an extensive background in textiles, and you actually worked for quite some time at Nike before joining the design team at 3form. So, and we all know Nike is all about textile innovations. And I'm wondering how you sort of captured and really garnered that knowledge base you have and incorporated into the design of the Horizon collection.
Yeah, with apparel, it's kind of fun. I started my career way back with Ralph Lauren, and you learn early on that fabric and material become such an integral part of apparel, and so early on I identified that it would be important to understand what we could and couldn't do with textiles, and then how we push those limits. And then at Nike, obviously, it's an amazing vehicle and such a wonderful company to learn and grow and develop alongside. The last 5 years of my career there, I spent in the innovation department, working a lot of the time on how do we take traditional textile weaving machines and push them to do things and create performance envelopes that we hadn't seen before. And so taking that knowledge and then partnering with a mill like Creation Bauman, we could see that they had the expertise. They could understand my language and what I wanted to accomplish. And even the intricacy of, we wanted to use different gauge yarn, starting with quite a heavy gauge yarn and then moving up to a fine yarn, and they understood how to do that. So I think we were able to sort of take, you know, their history and years of experience and couple it with mine and come out with this amazing new textile.
So you found a really great partner with Creation Bauman for this new collection. What really sparked the collaboration though? Like how did, like, you know, these minds of Creation Bauman and 3form really come together? And was it just their technical expertise that really was their contribution to the design of the textile?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about design, and obviously I come through the lens of design, but I believe that when a designer has a really, really clear idea and picture of their vision, then it makes those partnerships work more effectively. And so I came to the table with a pretty clear idea of, this is what I need it to do. And Creation Bauman was a perfect partner because they have that technical expertise to execute and of course augment, right? So anytime you're working with a partner, when you can sort of come to the table from a little bit different perspective and then collaborate and come out with the best of both visions, it's best. And with Creation Bauman, that happened. I actually went over to Switzerland, toured their facility, worked with their weaving experts and their technical experts to try and understand how they could bring it to life and bring this vision that is now Horizon.
So do we see some future collaborations with the folks from Creation Bauman?
I think so. Creation Bauman is a longtime partner. We've worked with them for a number of years, long before I came to 3form. And it's always a joy when you get to work with an expert, and they are experts. So yeah, I think we'll keep working on more ideas. We have a few things in the bank.
I was gonna say, I'm sure you have things brewing back there that you just can't talk about yet.
You know, one of the things that's fun about 3form is that we pull from all these different influences and elements of design. You know, we work with a Nepalese factory that started their history making prayer scrolls for the monks in Nepal, and we use them in our Fray product. So we get to work with those kinds of amazing experts. And then on the far side, we have the technical expertise of someone like a Creation Bauman that is very, very technical and advanced. And so, you know, working with those kinds of partners, it's fun. You get a lot of ideas in the bank and have fun getting that.
Well, I mean, obviously speaking of technical expertise, like while there's obviously sort of a beauty in what seems like very simple textile design in Horizon, there was actually a very complex weaving process for the collection, correct?
When you think about what we were trying to do, this idea of controlling translucency, providing a little bit more privacy in a seated position, and then allowing a little bit more light, maybe a little bit more visibility at the top of the textile, and then ultimately the panel. There is some technical challenges there. We thought about maybe two ways we could do that. One way was, do we control the density of the yarns that we're using? So are they compacted tighter at the bottom where we want a little less translucency, and open up a little bit at the top? The other way we thought about doing it is yarn gauge. Can we use a coarser, heavier yarn at the bottom to give us that slightly less translucency, and then a finer gauge yarn at the top? And we ultimately presented that to Creation Bauman, and we decided to do both. So we have a coarser yarn becoming finer, and then we also have a compaction that changes so the yarns get spaced out more as they go across to the top.
I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like obviously nothing good happens overnight, as we all know. And you know, this collection really did take 2 years of development, but were there other challenges that you really encountered in terms of the design or manufacturing process for Horizon?
I mean, you kind of hate to say like pandemic, COVID, it slowed us down a bit. But no, we didn't find any sort of unexpected challenges. I think I kind of knew enough about the textiles to sort of have a pretty good idea of those expectations. And then again, going back to, I always find that as designers, when we can frame up really clearly, it makes it easier for our partners, and Creation Bauman was fantastic. So yeah, I don't think we had any unexpected. And then our history of, embedding textiles in Varia help, because we don't have any unexpected challenges there.
Mhm. Well, I mean, you ultimately created a really beautiful textile, and it comes in these three rich colors. And I'm curious about what went into the development of the color palette and why you sort of limited it to just three colors.
Yeah, design's interesting because, our nature often is we want to expand, we want more. But you also learn as you advance in your career that editing is such a critical component of design. And so color became part of that edit. It would be amazing to do 20 colors, but then the choice becomes a little expansive. So 2 years ago, we were looking at our colors, and we have this amazing 250 color system. And we could see that it was really valuable to our designers, but it was also kind of like everything. It's
A
like,
little
hey, here's
overwhelming
all.
sometimes, I'm sure,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, Helene, I think that's the way to put it, is it's sort of overwhelming. And so we could see like, hey, we have a history and expertise in color, so let's maybe do an edit. And so 2 years ago in 2020, we launched the first kind of edited color palette for Freeform. It had 13 colors in it, and it was based on what we saw happening in the marketplace. And then this last year, we gave an updated palette. And I think this last year, it might have had 12 colors or maybe 11. And we're seeing a shift to the neutrals and to kind of those softer, warmer colors. And so our palette represents that. And as we started thinking about the Creation Bauman textile, we decided we would work with the palette that we have and then look at which colors are matching. Because when you're working on a gradient, you're gradiating from one color to a second color. And so we chose colors from that palette, and we ended up with, I think we ultimately ended up with 10, and then so a total of 5. And then we edited it down to 4, and then ultimately we edited it down to these 3 colors.
Mhm. But I mean, do you foresee in the future expanding upon that, maybe including the other two that didn't make the original cut?
As we look at where Freeform's heading, color will always be important. And so it's always a lever that we can pull in design. And, I mean, why wouldn't this amazing Horizon collection expand?
Mhm.
You know,
Well, speaking of expansion, let's just talk about the fact, because there's sort of two parts to Horizon. So obviously there's the beautiful textile that you partnered with Creation Bauman on that you can find in the Varia product, but there's also your etched glass collection that is part of Horizon. And I'm curious, like, how you translated what is the technical fabric into this etched patterning on the glass.
yeah, it's a great question. As we were starting to get samples of the Horizon textile and starting to look at the beauty and the fact that it was actually working, we were seeing, this gradient in color and gradient in translucency. We started thinking like, well, what about some other materials? And glass was just a natural. But glass is different. It's special in its own unique way. And so we looked at, okay, how would we bring this to life in another material like a glass? And etching was a natural process for us. We're really good at etching, and we have some IP around how Freeform etches glass, and it gives us great control and flexibility in how we execute that process. And so we decided, well, what would happen if we interpreted that heavy gauge yarn graduating up to a fine yarn in an etch pattern? And so we started there and we did it on clear glass and we loved it. And it was quite elegant, but we could see that we were just missing another little component, and it was that component of color. So rather than do just a direct interpretation and do a gradient in color, we felt like with glass, we believed that just a simple solid color combined with this edge pattern would be stunning and amazing. And as we started sampling it and then doing big panels in it, we just fell in love with it.
And of course, and with your editor hat on, you came to 3 colorways for the class as well.
We did, yeah. I mean, you know, the business is part of that editing process, right? Yeah. It always is. It's one of the things I love about design is about a business. It's not just beauty, it's not just art. And so when you look at that, you start to see the value that design can bring in that editing process to make sure that we give enough choice. And we felt like 3 with the glass gives us enough choice.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And trust me, I get that. I think for any designer, whether they're on sort of the product side or on the interior side, that might be the hardest part, is editing oneself. Like, you're so in the midst of it, it's hard to take that step back in a way and be like, maybe I don't need all of that. Like, and this will be just as good as a product in the end if I take away. So I definitely feel you. You spoke about it earlier, and I really appreciate the sentiment that you put into the collection, you know, in your thought about what environments will be like, what they were and what they'll be like moving forward. And there is this idea of sort of like, we all want to be separate for safety, but together, right? And this idea of like sort of public versus private. And that's really expressed in this beautiful gradation that you put obviously so much thought into, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Helene. When we at 3Forum, we talk about connectedness, and it's sort of another one of our core attributes. Varia has a special warmth to it as a material. It just feels a little softer in your space. And then of course, when you start adding color and texture, it just becomes rich and inviting. And we believe when we talk about connectedness that we want division at times in our space. We may have a conference room where we need a little bit of privacy. We may have an office where we need a little bit of privacy, or even an open space where we're trying to divide it visually. But as human beings, we like to still feel connected. And I think that's one of those sentiments we're all exposed to over this last year, is we're feeling a little disconnected. Like, wow, I've been at home for a little too long. I'm kind of anxious to get back and see my friends and peers and coworkers. And Varia can do that because it allows you to enjoy that privacy, but still feel and see through that translucency that there's something happening. There's somebody on the other side of that partition. Mm-hmm. So it's just a really great material for that.
And I loved you spoke about at some point about like the shadows that it creates, of like the human movement behind these sort of translucent, you know, partitions.
It does. And that's part of that. You can tell like, oh, somebody just walked by. I'm not in this building alone. Mm-hmm. No, there's activity happening.
Yeah. Well, I think right now we're really desperate for the activity.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you definitely, you know, put a lot of thought, you know, obviously into the way natural light interacts with it, the sense of translucency, but also just the versatility. And you know, obviously we touched on the colorways, but you know, there's different sizes and gauges to the partitions that really offers solutions to designers' needs. But like, how do you really envision designers integrating Horizon into their projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes when you think about starting in that design process, you're kind of imagining like, okay, we're targeting this particular design for maybe a healthcare segment, and we just think it'll resonate really well. Or we love this in like a corporate environment. And with Horizon, it's almost like this amazing chameleon. Like when you think about who doesn't want texture in their space, who doesn't want this kind of rich color? And then you mentioned earlier this kind of beautiful irregularity. Like we're all kind of drawn to that as designers and as humans. And so when we started getting the textile in and then crafting the varia, we could see that, wow, this would be amazing in a hospitality environment. It would look gorgeous in corporate or healthcare. It might brighten the space. And so I think this particular one feels like it's pretty broad as far as how it could be used.
Mhm. Well, of course, we're living in a time where the health and well-being of an individual is more important than ever. So, and I do know that Horizon and really a lot of the freeform products really speak to the needs that designers have to create sort of safer spaces for inhabitants, but also better spaces that really help with the well-being. Because, I just think of your comment about natural light and the way it interacts and the fact that it's one tenet of like how to improve an inhabitant's well-being.
Yeah, I mean, light's so important to us, right? I mean, we live by it, and of course, the Horizon collection does that so well. It helps us manage and control and allow light. We have about a year ago, we launched a new ethos called Align for Freeform, and it's this idea of aligning people, product, planet, and all of our products go through that lens as well. Varia as a platform is very successful from a sustainability standpoint, and we believe that's super important too. And so the benefit on the back end of having it go through those kinds of constraints and making sure that we comply with this amazing high benchmark of sustainability also speak to the wellness of people. And then the experiential side of, wow, that's beautiful. We love to have beautiful spaces, and that speaks to our health and wellness. And then the light. So there's just a lot of different factors happening when you think about the wellness.
Well, I mean, of course, in the midst of a crazy pandemic, you do decide to launch a much more aggressive sustainability program. I mean, how does Horizon really address the demand for more sustainable products just in general?
I think as designers, we're all looking for, more and better sustainable products. You probably remember last year we launched Fleck, which is about 80% recycled from our own products. We're working on expanding that beyond the 80%. I'll just give a little nod to that. Another one of those sort of in the works. And so all of our Varia platform, we take through that lens, and it's highly recycled as base products. And then we're pretty sustainable on our manufacturing process as well.
So why do you think for Freeform, it is so important to push forward with a stronger sustainability program and message and ethos, for the design community?
I think all of us have to be agents of our earth. And as designers, because we have such an important part in culture and where we're going as a planet, I think we have this opportunity to drive towards better or the other direction. And at Freeform, we believe that we have this opportunity to help designers and partner with designers to drive to that better side. And we believe that being sustainable and increasing that sustainability each year is really important as a planet, because when you think about the earth, every resource we have comes from the earth. We don't import outside of the earth. And so if we're not good caretakers, then we're going to deplete those resources. And we recognize that. We see in manufacturing processes where people aren't guarding those resources. And so we feel like we want to be contributors to guarding those resources for all of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's completely commendable, and we obviously can all do a lot better and,
Sure.
and moving forward and moving towards that, and taking it day by day, step by step. But of course, Christian, time flies. And, I just want to say that, obviously I'm appreciative of your time and your insight, obviously, into Freeform and the New Horizon collection, and really everything that you're doing to contribute back to the well-being of the earth, and obviously to your community as a whole, and to our wonderful audience out there. I want to ask you to please make sure to check out the Freeform website to learn more about Horizon, and of course about their sustainability program. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Jaccarino, Editor-in-Chief of Luxe Interiors and Design. Welcome to Creative Conversations on DesignTV. Today, I'm speaking with artist Sally King Benedict, whose visual voice is incredibly strong, inspiring, and beautiful. Hi, Sally, welcome. It's great to have you on DesignTV.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I've been looking.
Yeah, I know we published your house, and it's always so fun to, first of all, get an artist on who I have told you already, I am a super fan, and I feel like most of our viewers know you, but if you don't, Sally has many super fans. I am one of them. And then also, it's always so interesting to publish someone's home because you get sort of this personal view into who they are. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about that project in a bit. But I wanted to kick things off and ask about your artwork. You are an abstract expressionist painter with a very intuitive, improvised approach, i.e. you're not walking in the studio with like a plan necessarily, although maybe you do have one somewhere in your mind.
I try to have something, but it never works out. So I kind of just walk in.
What is it like? I mean, your paintings are so beautiful and filled with emotion. So talk a little bit about, what attracted you to that style that you have now, and what is it like to walk in and just, go for it?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I don't know how to do it any other way, to be honest. I think since I've been a child, I've always felt like I was expressing myself through my art, and I was such a visual person when I was little that, the emotions that's what starts me to do anything, really. So, when I get into the studio, I feel like whenever, I kind of, the way I'm feeling that day is really, dictates the palette. And then I sort of start there with color. And then it just evolves. I mean, the pieces don't have, like I said, like a set plan. I don't typically paint from a sketchbook or anything like that. They just really turn into something on their own through the process. And it just becomes a story, for me. And then what happens at the end can be very different than what happened at the beginning, because it just reflects the way you feel, really, and the way I want the viewer to feel when they see it.
That's super interesting. And also it just occurred to me, like, what if you started on a Monday and then you go back in on a Tuesday, and like, you have a different head.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest part of being, an intuitive painter, is that it has to change with the days. It has to change with the time and everything. And then the way it ends is it helps you to remember all of those timestamps and all of those feelings.
Yeah, because your work is, one of the many things that makes your work so intriguing and interesting is that there's so many layers there. If you get up close and you really see,
right,
there is sort of this story that evolves
right,
through the artwork, which is what makes it, so magical.
mm-hmm.
Also, your work, Sally, has such a confident, I just look at everything that you do and it feels so joyful. There's an exuberance to it, and sort of a bit of a sense of like pushing boundaries a bit.
Yeah.
What is it like for you to, it's kind of scary to stand down a blank canvas, but how do you sort of get into the zone, even though it's just sort of like, I'm going in, it's a Wednesday, this is how I'm feeling.
Right.
Give us a glimpse into like, what's it like in your studio, in your head, and what you have to get prepped, wise.
Right. You walk into my studio and there is paintings everywhere. There's tons of painting on the floor, I really can't start with just one. And I think the way to get out of my head really is to work on a number of things at the same time. And, typically I start by warming up by maybe putting down some color, or just, kind of the way I'm feeling that day, sort of the energy of the color can lead it, or just different mark making. Just like doing anything, I feel like it's really good to get a little bit like your heart rate up, just a little bit physical. And, I do a lot of yoga, so I try to really, calm down in my head too. But, it definitely helps when I have a few things going on at the same time, because whatever works on one piece, might not work on the other. And then I find out that this color harmony and combination works here. And so I bounce around the studio. I sort of, I think somebody would look in and think of it as a little bit chaotic, like this, how in the world does she keep anything straight? But it's just, that's just the way I work. It's just, it keeps things interesting for me. And I don't like to get so hyper focused on one thing. And the minute you start to, in my opinion, and from what I took from college too, from my professor, you pick your favorite thing and then you do everything to not touch it. And so it's almost better to just, let it go and work on a number of things.
Well, there's also, I think, a liveliness to all of your work. And so, what you just described, it's so interesting how that energy makes its way onto the paper or onto the canvas. That's one of the things that's just, so wonderful and interesting about art and talking to artists about the process.
Yeah.
We have to talk about color. I'm a big color girl. I know you are as well. And you have such a keen sense of color and how to mix those combinations. Will you talk a little bit about what your approach is, and also just like your love for color?
Oh my gosh, I do. I know. I feel like each individual color just has its own incredible story and potential, and and it's, to me, I've said it already, but the color kind of dictates this mood you sort of walk into, or when you walk into a room or a beautiful interior, whatever that color and palette is, it sort of envelops you and makes you feel a certain way. So I just, experimentation is one of my favorite things about color, and just the way they talk to each other, and even the lack of color is super fascinating to me. I mean, the science behind color is, just as interesting as, the art part, the color theory, and the way they harmonize, and the way I love the relationships of color. I think it's just always very fun, and it's always kind of problem solving on the canvas or on the paper of what works together, what speaks together, and then what doesn't. And contrast really, is always in my mind. And I'm so attracted to contrast in anything else and anybody else's work, whatever it is, honestly. And so I really love to have that moment that these colors can, form, whatever conversation they're having on the canvas. It's great.
Yeah, that's interesting. The colors are talking to each other. What mediums are there certain mediums that you're using, that you're attracted to, and are you mixing your colors? Talk a little bit about that detail.
I use, because of the different, dimensions of the painting, I use a lot of water-based, like inks and acrylics and fluid acrylics and gouache to sort of lay down first, because it's more of like an immediate satisfaction for me. And then I work more into like, you know, water mixable oils have been an incredible invention, you know, and I think a lot of artists still haven't even found out about these, but, you know, it makes it a lot more approachable to use oils when you don't have to use all of the, you know, all of the other stuff. So I do that. And then I end up, you know, using a lot of charcoal and drawing techniques mixed in with the paintings. And then I use a lot of really heavy bodied pigment sticks that are just basically oil sticks to give it that last bit of texture. And a lot of times just kind of a drawn effect of whatever, you know, I use everything I can get my hands on.
It's an interesting mix.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, you know, the faces that you do. You do a lot of different things, but, you know, you sort of these abstracted tennis sets and outdoor scenes and landscapes. But I feel like your abstracted artwork of faces are now iconic and very coveted by collectors. How did they come about, and sort of what's the inspiration behind them?
I love this question. And I always find out something new, even about the way they come out every time I answer it. But it did start, I would say, in college, when you do a lot of self-portraiture work and, you know, you have a lot of assignments with drawing from life, or, you know, all of those things. And I think my studio mates, just everybody's different approach to a portrait and the way they saw themselves, I think really inspired me. Just, you know, it just didn't have to be so literal and so representational. And so I took that, and then I started to, you know, kind of lose the mirror. I sort of started to get tired of doing the same thing, which was me. And then I really, you know, thought more about the woman that raised us and how she made us feel so warm and so safe in our house. And when she passed away, I wanted a piece of her with me forever. And I wanted it in our home. And that she really inspired the first piece that was, you know, not me as much, but, you know, somebody else that I loved. And then, you know, all the qualities in her that I loved. And it really, you know, once I got out of college and I, you know, really started doing it for a career, I found that people really resonated with, you know, the figure in the face. And sometimes they could see themselves or see somebody else they knew. And, you know, I think it kind of speaks to everybody in a way. And I like that. And I wanted people to have, you know, almost like a home protector, just the way I did. And so it really is all about all the people I meet and everybody I want to meet, the places I want to go, the places I've been. You know, it could be anybody, really. I want it to be whoever anybody wants it to be, really.
Yeah, I mean, I love those faces, and they just have a joy, and yeah, it's almost like someone in your house that's watching out for you and protecting you, as you said, which is really sort of a lovely sentiment to have that. While studying at the College of Charleston, you worked for an interior designer. Her name is Kathleen Rivers. How do you talk a little bit about your approach to interiors? We're going to specifically talk about, you know, your home in Atlanta, because I've got some questions for you about that, which we published. But, you know, how do you think about interiors and art, and how did that experience of working with Kathleen sort of inform, you know, your own artwork and your thinking about artwork?
She is a brilliant designer, and she's so loved and so well respected. And you know, it was really great to work with a designer that loved art, had an appreciation for art, loved interiors just as much, but the natural way that her clients, you know, collected art, or if they needed her assistance, you know, it just didn't seem so forced. It seemed very natural for her, the way she created a space maybe around a piece of art, or, you know, the way she placed. I just always thought that she had a very natural approach, and it wasn't so formulated, and it just looked just looked very beautiful and elegant, and it never looked decorated. I don't know if that makes sense, but she had me working projects like gold leafing chairs and, anything I could do to use my hands instead of, pulling fabrics, which I love to do too. But, she'd have like a challenge, and I'll do the mirrors, or I'll paint whatever. And then she ended up actually using my paintings that I was still completing my last year of college, and her clients sort of started to take a notice, and she and another one of my favorite women, who's a jewelry designer, Janet Gregg, hosted my first art show. And so I think with people like that push you and notice something in you, it was, I'm so forever grateful for them, because they saw that I really needed to take that direction and just stick with that.
Yeah. And to have, design, it's so important to have sort of the art and the interiors feel effortless,
Yeah.
right? We've seen where it just feels like this doesn't really work. I imagine you work with a lot of interior designers. You have a lot of just collectors, but I imagine that there's a lot of interior designers that buy from you and also have you do commissions for their interiors.
Yeah, that's right. And I really love both sides of it, to be honest. The commissions are really fun. And I think a lot of people are surprised when I say that, but as long as I can also do what I need to do and make time for experimentation and, trying to get somewhere, but the designers keep me on my toes, and it's so much fun to work with them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, particularly with you being sort of this intuitive artist that's just like, I'm going to go in and do what I need to do. But then you also have an interior design client who might really want you to follow maybe something that they're expecting at the end.
Right. Yeah. And most times I think people see a past work that, is no longer available, or maybe from a series, that I'm not currently doing, or and the interior designers that I work for are they trust me and I trust them, and we don't really ever have an issue. They're just, here's the space, the client loves these pieces that you've done, and here you go. And then I don't really communicate and send updated pictures and all that, because like I said, the painting can change so much. So I really just share those images at the end. And then, if we need to make little adjustments here and there, I really enjoy that part, because I enjoy making the client just so happy, and just to, a lot of people don't really know what they want, and they can't really express what they see as the end result. And that's where the designer is a great resource for me, because it kind of takes that anxiety away for everybody. And they're just like, they're communicating with both of us. And it's really nice sometimes, because they are able to explain to the client, she knows what she's doing, trust her, and then it's sort of seamless. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's great. So we featured your beautiful Atlanta home in our May-June issue, and you oversaw the renovation and interiors yourself. And your home sort of has this global traveler on dream vacation vibe. Tell us a little bit about what that was like for you. And stylistically, what were you going for? And how much did you enjoy doing those interiors?
Yes, I'm lucky. My husband is just as passionate as I am. And we've always, really bonded over that. It feels like our baby, our house is, our space. We're both so, we really like to make a comfortable, approachable, storied space. And we both grew up kind of around beautiful homes. Our grandparents had incredible style, and they always just were very elegant, but very casual. And that's sort of how we wanted to live. And if we couldn't get out of the city, if we couldn't get to the mountains or to the beach, we figured it was just best to bring them to us. And so, but it just naturally progresses over time, and we take our time. We move furniture around a ton. There are things that we just can't live without that have been in houses and rentals from Charleston from when we were 20. And, things that we both have bought from estate sales. I mean, we just kind of enjoy the process so much that at the end, it got to a point where we just felt like we were on vacation, and so it was fabulous. We loved it.
Yeah, I think the indoor outdoor connection. I mean, just like the whole pool area and the way you do the landscaping was really beautiful and well done. We were so happy to share it with our readers.
Yeah. And I think when you're so, well, for us, we were both so involved. I mean, my husband basically was the general contractor, and, it just makes it that much sweeter. Sometimes it's like, it's so much work, but it's just like, oh man, you just, there's a lot of mistakes. So we'll learn, you always learn from your mistakes, but it makes it really nice.
And you have an appreciation for builders and contractors and designers and architects and everything that they bring to the equation.
Right.
You have such a distinctive voice with your art, and collectors sort of love your style. How do you evolve in terms of your range, right? It's like people like, they're like, I want the Sally King Benedict, I want those faces. Yeah. And you have super fans. I am one of them. So how is that tricky in terms of like, for yourself and as an artist, sort of exploring other areas that you want to, tackle? Talk a little bit about, your approach to that.
It is, it's sometimes hard to break out of a routine that feels so, it just kind of comes so naturally. Like the face, I do feel like the figurative faces they're such a part of me. It does feel like they typically flow out a little bit easier than, say, like a purely abstracted, attempt at a color field painting or something, but as long as I give myself permission and time to experiment. Yeah, I mean, I honestly do. It's the one thing I try to plan is a day, 2 days to just not worry about everything else in the studio and just do something kind of funky and crazy and make a sculpture or, it could be anything. It could be read a book. I mean, it's, look into people that I would love to collaborate with, these like dream people that I would like to approach or something. And I'd like to be able to be in the education part of it more, but with a young family, that's been difficult. So I think, just to always have plans on the horizon to better yourself, to learn more, helps to sort of break that monotony. So but I also think there is really great value in repetition. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, don't overflow the market with, that kind of thing, but nothing is the same. Everything's different. And so to me, it's okay. I think, I give myself grace that it's okay if I do, 50 faces that day, even if they're tiny, because that's the way I learned one thing about, out of those 50 that might be valuable for my next painting. I just,
and the artist should, go where the artist wants to go, right? There's like the market, and we get that, but I feel like, let the artist be.
Right. And then the selling versus making is that battle, right? Of a career artist or career creative or anything. It's the juggle between the business and actual creating. So
and my last question for you, Sally, because we have a lot of designers and creative people who are watching, and I think it's always interesting for me to hear from creative people, like, how do you fill that creative well, right? You have got a thriving studio practice with lots of collectors. And, you know, what do you do so that you are feeling inspired?
I love to be at home and to be quiet and, you know, no TVs on. And you know, if I need a day off from the studio, even if I have a deadline, it's okay. You know, I just won't work that day because rest and peace and all of those things, and yoga, and, you know, of course, traveling, and just sort of unplugging the visual stimulation that we all have every single day, and just to be out in nature, you know, swimming or anything that, you know, I listen to a ton of music. I love to drive around in the car, and there's so many things to clear my head and to kind of fill that bucket. But I typically mostly just sort of leave my phone in another room. I never sleep with it in the same room. And I just try to snuggle with my kids and take in what's around me, because that's ultimately what I bring back into the studio. I mean, everything, you know, makes the paintings what they are. So if I'm not paying attention to what's actually around me, I hit a drought, you know?
Right. Yeah. It all sort of visually comes in and then is digested and then comes out onto the canvas.
Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure to speak with you. We just love what you do. And again, thanks for letting us publish your beautiful home.
Oh, thank you. It was so much fun to work with y'all, and I adore you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to Metropolis Sustainable Product Spotlight. I'm Senior Editor Kelly Beeman, and in this episode, we're taking a look at an upholstery developed for furniture manufacturer by Loom Textiles, which is known for its crafts-driven approach to design. Not only is the new line of fabric rare earth, BIFMA tested for contract use, it is also something rather revolutionary, a biodegradable polymer that is also low VOC and bleach cleanable. Here to tell us more about this new collection are Andrea Babb, Loom's Director of Product Development Management, and designer Suzanne Tick, the company's creative director, whose namesake studio drives their products' sustainability, wellness, and very well-known high performance. It's so interesting to hear that it's possible to have something that doesn't fill up landfills and also has these great high performance qualities. Loom, it seems, is a pioneer, and this is not the first textile that you've developed that is biodegradable. Is that right?
No, it's our second. It's our second this year. It's the first two that are in the industry, which is really exciting for us.
That is exciting. And this one specifically is recycled, uses recycled content, post-consumer recycled content, and that is post-consumer polyester, which I think is very important to explain. If you don't mind, just walk us through the innovation, especially hitting this new milestone so quickly after the first, to explain what went into developing rare earth.
You know, we started 4 years ago in exploring biodegradable fibers, and started talking to our manufacturers and suppliers, and really wanted to focus in on how we wanted the fibers to look and feel. It's not only, you know, we know it's polyester, but how can we make the polyester look more matte and more natural and more, you know, fiber that you really want to touch and feel? And because, you know, it can go in a lot of different directions. So we started talking to them early on the delustering effects and how to spin it. And so we worked with our supplier a long time ago, and we get the yarn in in the white form, and we start weaving structures. We usually start from fiber, and from those structures, we try a number of different weave structures, and then have the manufacturer use that yarn. And we're usually the first off the rack with the fibers, and then we start looking at dye stuffs and seeing how it dyes and see how it finishes and things like that. So
this is a strong point for you guys. I mean, this is what you're known for, the fact that that the design begins so at such an early stage, developing your own fiber.
Yeah, Kelly, this is the reason that Loom really exists, is that, I looked at the industry and I thought there's not a textile company whose ethos is based on sustainability. And as a kid, I grew up on a junk metal, scrap metal yard with my dad. Everything's recycled. So I just figured everybody did that. And I realized in working in the industry that, it was all about more and more and more to grow your business, more products, more products, more products. And I always felt so uncomfortable with that because it's so, too much product in the industry. So when I conceived of this idea and started talking to some companies about it, and said, this is, we could really make this whole basis of this collection be about sustainable materials. That was the original seed to what Loom has become. So.
And as you just mentioned, you certainly have worked with other companies and you do consulting. So what is it about the partnership with Technion that made this possible? Because it sounds like you really needed a good partner who was on the same page, so to speak, with the sustainability.
I think we have a great team. I mean, Andrea and Dave, and it's a tight group. It's not a huge group. And frankly, David Feldberg lets us do what we want to do. As long as we can be profitable and we can show that we can launch these products and they're relative for what's needed for the time, they apply beautifully. I mean, it's really been a really an amazing experience to be able to do that. I mean, Andrea, you may want to speak to that too. I mean, what's the magic behind it is that,
Yeah, especially making it contract grade. I mean, something that has this strength, that feels safe. But I mean, that's I think the big exciting moment here. So I'd love to hear that, Andrea. Like, how is that possible that it's bleach cleanable and biodegradable?
It's amazing how far technology in terms of fiber development has come, even in the past couple of years. It was we were always able to access recycled yarns or partial recycled content in our development, but this biodegradable fiber is a tremendous step forward. It's this development or invention, I should say, of the biocatalyst additive, that is goes into the polymer chip, that the polyester is extruded from, is groundbreaking, because this will actually allow the polyester to break down in a very specific environment. And when you think of the amount of waste that goes into a landfill every year, this is groundbreaking. We truly think that all polyester is, if it's not 100% recycled, it's going to be biodegradable, or even better, biodegradable and recycled in just a couple of years' time. I always think about, how big cell phones used to be. They would be as big as a shoebox, years and years ago. And then, technology is so, for those things, is so small now. That's what happens in any industry. We'll see polyester that can't break down is going to be unheard of in a couple of years' time, and we love that.
Yeah. All right.
Less is,
yeah.
We do more with less all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Suzanne. You were going to add to that.
No, I think it's important to know that I think standards are going to shift. The Association for Contract Textiles kind of made this profile of what you have to pass and all of that. And then LEED is extremely important in terms of points. So now we really think that, projects are going to be asking for all biodegradable materials or 100% recycled. And we're starting to see that, and we're starting to be asked for that. And so we are, well equipped with our collection, and because we don't come out with a lot of products. And so what we do come out with is a really important, focused collection that passes all of those parameters, so that again, it's not about more product in the pipeline. It's about the right products in the pipeline that pass all of these codes and tests, but are truly sustainable.
Absolutely. Are you able to say which furnishings it's available on, or can it be specified across offerings?
It can be our rare earth collection, and all of our textiles can be specified with any manufacturer. We do very stringent application testing, whenever we go further into the development with anything. So the great thing is we're able to fully test on all of the Technion pieces and also Studio TK's pieces. So that gives us an overall view of how well it's going to do on any type of seating or vertical application, whether that is task seating, where it's a 24/7 type environment, or if it's, your beautiful lounge pieces, that you'll have in the public spaces of your design. We don't launch it if it doesn't work great.
Yeah, or Andrea's really got the claims thing on her mind too, and so we know if Andrea's kind of like we can just see her kind of squeaming a little bit, and we're pushing back hard, saying, Andrea, they just aren't upholstering it properly. And we get into, but we look at all of the images of everything that we're working on all these different seating types to make sure. And at the end of the day, we do the right thing, because you can't slide something in and fake it, because if it gets upholstered and we know something, could fail,
Right.
it's not even worth it, so
Yeah.
it's, we're really, we're all in it all the time
Yeah.
together. So
I love that combination though, Suzanne. I love the fact that you don't hold back in terms of the commitment to craftsmanship, right? And so it sounds like in our conversations that it ends up limiting the amount of products you bring to market, but they are of a certain level. I mean, craftsmanship is often associated with the slow, small batch production, but this focus is really, it sounds so earth friendly. I love the fact that is really the hallmark, right?
Yeah, I mean, we range from, products in the 200s with renewable resources, and we go all the way down to the 20s. And, though we consider our collection a boutique collection because we start everything from scratch and we design everything, it's all, built sequentially. We know exactly how long everything's going to take, and working together with Andrea and her team and our marketing and getting it all out. It's all, everything, there's no kind of, it all has to be at the same level. And the upholsterability of it does too. And, the engineering is critical. So we have to engineer the products properly. And most of those products that are our top sellers, have been manifested, almost all of them, on our looms in the studio.
I want to make sure, Andrea, that I didn't miss some of those certifications.
We've really focused on the ones that we think are really important and really help our customers and our designers understand, what they're purchasing from us. So our main certification is Declare certification. And the wonderful thing about Declare is it has two very important components to it. The first part of it is assessing the ingredients transparency of all of the components that go into a particular fabric. So that could be yarns, that could be dye stuffs, that could be finishes. And what we want to see is that we have full ingredients transparency, and we also want to understand that there's no chemicals of concern in the fabric. And when a fabric is certified red list free, that means that, you know, it has been vetted, we have the full transparency of it, and we know that there are no chemicals of concern in there. We also do what is called a clean air certification, and that's also a standard that you have to have before you can have declare labeling for your fabrics. And that means that, you know, you don't have volatile organic compounds, you know, off-gassing from your fabrics. You know, you don't want to have formaldehyde and other compounds like that, you know, off-gassing into your space. So the combination of red list free and clean air certification means that you can be very comfortable specifying those fabrics. And we have declare certification for over half of our fabrics. And that's something that's really easy to find on our website.
Andrea, would you mind walking us through the various styles that are a part of the collection and which certifications those styles have?
Absolutely. For our rare earth collection, we're really happy to be able to say that we have environmental certifications for each one of our styles that are included in that collection. So mitered, of course, you'll have seen that beautiful product shot, you know, of the bright colors, you know, Suzanne's inspiration behind that one. Mitered is made in the USA, and it has recycled content in it and renewable content in it. Of course, there's wool content, there's cotton in it. And it really, you know, we're finding that renewable content, you know, is just as important as recyclable content. You know, it's something that, you know, can be renewed, you know, and not at the detriment of the environment.
And the wool is from Pennsylvania, so it's great. So we're trying to stay close to home with a lot of these, you know.
We seem to be entering a new era when interior products aren't just required to be sustainably made, but also biodegradable. The fact that a big part of Loom's business comes from selling directly to consumers also suggests the impact of these new products may be felt far and wide. Thank you for joining us for Metropolis Sustainable Product Spotlight with Loom.